Right now on Morning News Now, taking a stand. Nearly 24 staffers from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have resigned over refusing to, quote, jeopardize Americans' sensitive data. Musk has been tasked with finding ways to shrink the federal government. He is expected to take part in President Trump's first cabinet meeting. That is happening today. Meanwhile, immigration officials are planning to locate and potentially deport children who came into the U.S. alone. The latest from Washington just ahead. Narrow win. House Republicans pass a budget plan to advance President Trump's legislative agenda. It's a win for House Speaker Mike Johnson. The deal calls for trillions in cuts, something Democrats say will harm Americans.
The Republican budget is going to take health care away from millions of working Americans and even children to pay for a tax cut that Elon Musk and Republican billionaire donors asked for.
We will have more from Capitol Hill just ahead. One-sided agreement. Russia has offered a deal to the Trump administration for access to minerals in Ukrainian territory it seized. The White House has not committed to a deal on rare earth minerals, but has not ruled it out. The latest developments ahead. And where's the beef? Food prices continue to jump. Now we can add meat to the list. We will tell you what is causing the spike in price. Yet another thing.
Exactly. We're dedicating a good amount of time this morning talking about these prices and giving you some advice to hopefully help you out. Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We begin our show at the White House, where President Trump is expected to hold his first cabinet meeting of the second term in office later today. And despite the fact that he's not officially a member of the cabinet, tech billionaire Elon Musk is expected to attend this meeting. This is going on during this firestorm created by his Department of Government Efficiency, cutting the federal workforce and gutting government departments.
This morning, those workers are facing more uncertainty and confusion. Musk says they will get a second chance to email in their accomplishments or face, quote, termination. Now, that's despite guidance from the Office of Personnel Management saying this is all voluntary. So many questions and workers' jobs at stake. The president was pressed yesterday to clarify Musk's request.
It's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer, I guess you get fired.
Is he speaking for you when he says you'll be terminated?
Yeah, everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. You know the old statement, the buck stops here, right?
Here to talk about all this and more, NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist and our senior national politics reporter John Allen. Good morning to both of you. Aaron, let's start with you. What can we expect from today's cabinet meeting, and how is Elon Musk's presence going to factor into all this, given this backlash over these mass layoffs and just the back and forth and confusion when it comes to DOJ and other departments?
Well, some of that, Joe, I think is unknown at this point. We know this cabinet meeting is going to be happening at 11 o'clock this morning. President Trump will, of course, lead that meeting. At this point, we know that 18 of his cabinet level picks, his secretaries in particular, have been confirmed. And so we'll at least see them around the table with President Trump. There are a few cabinet members who've yet to be cabinet nominees who've yet to be confirmed. They will probably be in the room as well. And then, of course, we know from the press secretary that we should expect them to be giving the president updates on the work that they've been doing in identifying what the president has called waste, fraud, and abuse. The press secretary told us that was a key part of what we should expect to happen today. And of course, Elon Musk has been the leader of that effort, along with his DOJ team inside the White House. And so we know that he'll be in the room. It's not at all unusual for senior advisors to the president to be in the room when these cabinet meetings happen. We'll be watching the optics of it all, though. It would be unusual for someone to be at the table who is not at the cabinet secretary level. Typically, you would see the president most closely surrounded by the vice president, secretary of state, defense, treasury, the attorney general, for example. And then senior advisors are oftentimes sort of seated around the room. We'll be looking to see where Elon Musk is at the table and the degree to which he engages in the conversation. We don't know how much of this meeting we'll be able to see on camera, but certainly we'll hear President Trump speak when that meeting gets underway at 11 o'clock, Joe and Savannah.
And we know you'll bring us those details, Aaron. John, let's bring you in here. So you've been digging deeper into this chainsaw approach Elon Musk and DOJ are taking to the government. You wrote this great article really speaking with a lot of these federal workers about all these changes. What are you hearing from them, and what are you seeing the impact to be on these departments?
Yeah, Savannah, the point is absolute chaos, as you saw in that headline there. I spoke to several current and former government officials. In particular, the current officials were trying to figure out what exactly it was they're supposed to do when this first email went out on Saturday, basically telling them that if they didn't respond with 5 bullet points about what they did last week, that they would be fired. And then on Monday, many of the cabinet agencies told their workers, you don't have to respond to this. And then, Musk said essentially, well, this was kind of a warning. We'll come back with a second email. You might get fired for that. And basically what all these folks told me is that they spent a lot of time, and their bosses spent a lot of time figuring out how to respond to these emails, losing potentially tens of millions of dollars for the government in the name of the Department of Government Efficiency.
John, I also want to ask you about this video President Trump posted on his platform, Truth Social. Many people see it as highly offensive. It's an AI-generated video showing what appears to be the president's vision or someone's vision for Gaza as some kind of glamorous beach resort. It features the president, Elon Musk, the Israeli prime minister. Of course, Gaza is in the midst of a humanitarian catastrophe. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed. Do we have any idea why the president would post something like this right now?
Well, I'm not certain why he decided to post it right now. Things raining down from heaven, I guess their money at this big gold statue. It reminds me a little bit of when the president was in North Korea, when he was doing negotiations with the North Koreans for a nuclear summit, where he sort of did a similar kind of video to show what could happen in North Korea. Part of it, though, I'm sure, is a distraction a little bit from, basically a war that he said would have come to an end. There are 2 wars that he basically promised would come to an end on day 1 of his presidency. Hostilities that he said would come to an end on day 1 of his presidency. And what we have not seen yet, it's essentially holding here with Gaza and the Israelis, and not holding with Ukraine and Russia, an actual end to, an end to these wars.
Aaron, we are also learning plans about the Trump administration has on immigration. Here's a couple details. One is possibly to deport unaccompanied migrant children that we mentioned a moment ago that had come here alone. The other is something called this new gold card visa scheme. Tell us about these.
Yeah, the administration has been looking at ways to reduce the number of undocumented migrants in this country. Obviously, we've seen so many of the actions that have been taken over the last month to round up undocumented immigrants who have committed crimes in particular. Some of those folks having been taken to Guantanamo Bay to begin the deportation process, others put on planes and taken to the countries that they come from. And so now there's talk about an effort that would put more focus on rounding up children. You mentioned this gold card. President Trump spoke about that in particular in the Oval Office yesterday as he was signing some executive orders. Right now, there's a program that allows immigrant investors to come into the country, to get green cards, and to have permanent resident status if they invest in businesses, if they create jobs in this country. That is a program that currently exists and one that the president says he wants to do away with in favor of the Trump gold card. I want you to hear what the president said about that.
We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card.
The president suggesting that those wealthy people would create jobs and contribute to the economy, would pay taxes. There are some questions about who would be allowed in through this program, who would be excluded in this program. We expect, Joe and Savannah, that in about 2 weeks we'll get more details about this. We did hear from the Commerce Secretary as he was standing in the Oval Office with the president and said that the vetting process would be similar to what already exists, but you'd be able to get this gold card with a $5 million payment to the U.S. government.
All right, Aaron, John, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Let's turn now to a major victory for House Republicans we mentioned. Last night, they approved a budget plan to pay for President Trump's sweeping agenda while seeking up to $2 trillion in spending cuts. The resolution was narrowly adopted 217 to just 215 during a dramatic floor vote. Just one Republican joined Democrats in voting against it.
After the vote, Speaker Mike Johnson celebrated the win, while Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries issued a stark warning.
This is the first important step in opening up the reconciliation process. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we are going to deliver the America First agenda. We're going to deliver all of it, not just parts of it, and this was the first step in that process.
The House Republican budget resolution will set in motion the largest Medicaid cut in American history. It's outrageous.
Now, this brings Republicans another step closer to passing what President Trump has called one big, beautiful bill, but a lot of work still needs to be done.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin. You can see is with us. Julie, good morning. So when we spoke yesterday, there was still enough opposition among Republicans to sink this budget plan. And then last night there was some back and forth over whether this vote should have even happened. So how did Speaker Mike Johnson end up pulling this off?
Yeah, back and forth is putting it lightly. Speaker Johnson actually called the vote off after holding the floor for an hour building when all of a sudden they were called back to the floor to vote on this House budget resolution. This comes after all day long we were hearing from some House Republicans, including Victoria Spartz and Warren Davidson, saying no way, they will not support this bill. Of course, some pressure from the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue in the White House started to kick in. We heard that President phone calls with members trying to get them to support this budget resolution, which again is the first step in beginning to unlock funding for his agenda at the border, energy, drill baby drill, what we heard him saying on the campaign trail, those mass deportations, military, and extending his 2017 tax. It's all in all 217 to 215. Just one Republican, Thomas Massie, who's been a no on everything, including his speakership a couple of weeks ago, voting with all Republicans to pass the bill. Again, though, just the first step in a very long process, and certainly something even Senate Republicans who had their own version didn't respect.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you there for your reporting. Obviously, a bad internet connection. We'll try to continue that conversation.
All right, the Supreme Court handed a death row inmate a rare victory. On Tuesday, the court threw out Oklahoma prisoner Richard Glossop's murder conviction. The justices ruled that he is entitled to a new trial because of prosecutorial misconduct. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has more.
He's been on death row for more than 20 years. The Supreme Court granted Richard Glossop a new trial.
I talked to Rich, and he is beyond thrilled. We've struggled through 9 execution dates and 3 last meals, and all Rich wanted was the truth to come out.
Convicted by a jury in Oklahoma for organizing the 1997 killing of his boss, Barry Van Treese, Glossop has always maintained his innocence. Lester spoke with him by phone in 2023.
Did you have anything to do with the murder of Barry Van Treese?
I did not.
Independent reviews of the case commissioned by state officials finding the prosecution destroyed key evidence before Glossop's trial and failed to correct false testimony from a key witness, prompting a rare concession from Oklahoma's Attorney General that Glossop's conviction should be overturned. Lester sitting down back in 2023 with 2 conservative lawmakers fighting on Glossop's behalf, just as news broke that the Supreme Court had agreed to hear the case and stop Glossop's execution.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The justices concluding in a divided opinion, the prosecution violated its constitutional obligation to Glossop. But an attorney for the victim's family says they remain undeterred.
The family members are confident that when there's a retrial in this case, it will clearly show that Glossop is guilty of first-degree murder.
As for what comes next here, the DA's office is saying they've actually formed a committee to review any cases eligible for the death penalty, and Mr. Glossop's case will not be finalized until that work is done. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos for more on this. So given what we know, what are the odds we even see a new trial, or could prosecutors just say, let's let this one go?
Yeah, I've had cases like this, and initially it's not unusual for the prosecutors to say, we will retry this case. But once they get out all the dusty old banker's boxes and they start looking to see where the witnesses are, they may not actually end up retrying the case. I've really had this come up in my own cases. And after, in this case, 30 years, 3 decades, how are you going to pull in all the missing witnesses? Now, sometimes you can just read their testimony into the record, but not always. It depends on the rules and the conditions. And so it is a difficult case for prosecutors. This is a major victory, getting a new trial. Getting a new trial 1 year after your conviction, not as good. After 3 decades, it's fantastic because you really have a shot at the new trial.
Danny, what are the biggest points the defense will rely on, do you think, if this does go back to court?
The exact issues that were raised by the Supreme Court that go directly to the credibility of the one witness who identified and implicated this defendant, Glossip. There really wasn't much evidence other than the one guy who cooperated, the actual killer, who cooperated and agreed to testify against Glossip for a reduced sentence. They have more information now, including the circumstances under which he was prescribed lithium and his diagnosis and other information, some of which was known originally, but more information since emerged that was clearly not known at the time of trial. That now will come in and make it more difficult to secure a conviction.
Let's talk about that one guy. His name is Justin Sneed. He's the one who actually carried out the murder. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. He's accused of lying on this stand. Still alive, so if we do get a new trial, I mean, we would almost certainly see him on the stand again. What does that look like? How does that work?
Yeah, and consider now, this time, you have an entire trial transcript full of testimony that you can mine for potentially inconsistent statements. I have this literally going on right now with one of my cases, that you go through the entire trial testimony, and then when they testify, you don't get depositions in criminal cases. So a lot of times when the witness takes the stand, you really have a limited idea of what they're going to say. But in this case, if he deviates this Sneed from his original trial testimony, he's going to get hammered. So that is a benefit to the defense. You get an outline of what the prosecution's going to do. They're not going to change their plan. And you're going to get an entire transcript that witness has to testify perfectly consistently with, or else you're just going to hammer him with his inconsistencies, even though they were 30 years ago.
Makes it much easier to get to reasonable doubt, I would think.
I would think so, yeah, but not always.
How unusual is it, kind of some of the details here, like that there was error admitted?
That you mean that the prosecution failed to disclose information?
Yeah.
Well, as a defense attorney, and I'm biased, we claim this happens all the time on appeal, or when we're filing what's called a habeas or challenging our conviction. We often claim that prosecutors fail to turn over evidence, and sometimes they do. The key is whether or not it would have made a difference. That's usually the analysis that an appellate court will make. They'll say, well, okay, they may have failed to disclose something, because prosecutors are not required to disclose anything and everything we want them to. There are very strict rules, and in fact, discovery in criminal cases is more limited than discovery in civil cases. So courts realize that, and they look and they say, okay, here's some information they failed to disclose. Did it make a difference? Then you have to engage in this sort of imaginary situation where you imagine the jury and imagine whether or not they would have reached a different conclusion based on this evidence if they had access to it. So it is an exercise in imagination, this kind of appeal, but the defense will have this information this time around, and presumably it will make an even stronger case for reasonable doubt.
All right. Danny, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We've got yet another scary aviation incident to tell you about. This one was a very close call at Chicago's Midway Airport. Here's video recorded by an airport surveillance camera. It shows a Southwest Airlines flight on its final landing approach when a small jet rolls right into its path. There it is on the runway. NBC News' Aaron McLaughlin has more on the latest event that's putting airline passengers on edge.
At Chicago's Midway International Airport, an investigation after yet another stunningly close call. The video captured on an airport webcam shows Southwest Flight 2504 nearly touching down. The same moment a private jet crosses the runway. The flight abruptly pulls up, averting potential disaster.
Southwest 2504 going around.
It was surreal. Passengers Emily Novak and Kaylee Mask were on board the Southwest flight from Omaha. What went through your mind when you saw the video?
Shock.
Yeah.
Because we were so oblivious to what was happening, because the pilot was so calm and he acted like it was just an everyday, thing.
The FAA says the Flexjet private jet entered the runway without authorization. Flexjet released a statement saying it's investigating and adheres to the highest safety standards. Meanwhile, Southwest says its crew followed safety procedures, circled the airport, and landed safely. It's the latest in a string of air disasters and mishaps. From the midair collision that killed 67 near Reagan National Airport to the air disaster in Philadelphia, a crash landing in Toronto, and most recently, an emergency landing after a cabin filled with haze over Atlanta.
The circumstances have been quite different in each one of these accidents or incidents, so it's still too early to draw a common thread through all of them.
All of it rattling travelers nationwide. From a consumer confidence standpoint, are we nearing a tipping point?
No, I don't think we're nearing a tipping point, but aviation is still incredibly safe, and hopefully this is not the beginning of some long-term trend.
All right, our thanks to Aaron McLaughlin for that report. Well, one aviation expert told NBC News that close calls like this are extremely rare and have actually been declining in recent years.
All right, after what felt like endless rounds of frigid temperatures and heavy snow, springtime trying to make an early arrival. Above average highs are in store over the next several days.
All right, y'all, I am not even doing coat. I'm going just vest.
Oh.
Angie Lassman, good morning. And it is so fun.
I don't know if I put my stamp of approval on that. You get in the shade and it's like 50 and it's a little chilly, but I get it. We are all very excited that our temperatures are above normal finally, especially when you compare them to what we were dealing with just last week with that really kind of coldest air of the season that had settled in for most of the country. It's a different story this week, though. Notice what you're looking at. These are temperatures above normal for this time of year. It's almost the entire country that's seeing that. And we're actually going to see highs that are running more than 10 degrees above normal for about 170 million people today, specifically east of the Rockies. For most, you can see temperatures into the high 50s for parts of the plains. We've got 70s on tap once again for Dallas, El Paso. We have a whole lot of folks that are going to see 80s for the Southwest. It'll be feeling very summer-like in Phoenix today. We've got 70 degrees in Lexington and upper 70s for Atlanta. Over the last year, we've seen this kind of trend where we've had a whole lot more warmer than normal days versus colder than average days. And it just shows you that some of these are talking 2 to 1 different, more than two times that in some spots. El Paso had 65 days where temperatures were 10 degrees warmer than the average versus the 19 days that it was colder than the average. And that just gives you kind of the indication over the last year that it is more common for us to see unseasonably warm temperatures versus the cold. Although last week it was very cold. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, we see the high 50s in New York. So still, Savannah's going to be walking around in a tank top, I think. We've got upper 60s for Richmond, 77 for Columbia. The middle of the country, you are going to keep the warmth going, too. It's high 50s across the Dakotas. We've got low 40s in Illinois, 59 degrees for St. Louis. So overall, really kind of mild air that has settled in for the next couple of days. It does get a little cooler by the time we get into the beginning part of our weekend, especially if you live in those northern tier states. So Chicago, you're into the 50s on Friday, but you get a rude awakening on Saturday when your high is near freezing. 50 degrees on Saturday in Evansville, and you're down to the 40s. Even Atlanta, you kind of hover into the 60s and the 70s. New York City goes back to those mid 50s on Saturday, and then again, the 30s return just in time for us to wrap up our weekend. Big picture look elsewhere across the country. We do have some fog that we're dealing with this morning. So if you're traveling along I-10, I-45 along the Gulf Coast, places like Lake Charles between Baton Rouge as well, that's where you're going to see reduced visibilities. We've got about a half of a mile visibility in New Iberia and Lake Charles and Beaumont. You can see a quarter of a mile. That extends up to Alexandria. So it's going to take a little time for this to kind of mix out and for us to see those better visibilities as the morning goes on. But in the meanwhile, of course, taking a little extra slow and using those low beams. We do have a couple of systems that are working across parts of the Great Lakes. This is one of them. This is a Clipper system that's bringing us a little rain. Green Bay, Chicago, Lafayette, all dealing with some of those showers. And we even have a little bit of kind of wintry mix and even some snow working in there. This is going to be something that's going to be a fast mover, but does bring us some light snow across Michigan and Wisconsin today and eventually into interior portions of the Northeast. We'll also see the rain from essentially Ohio, Pennsylvania, down to Missouri. So umbrellas needed for that region. And then this shifts farther east into the Northeast for tomorrow. And then here comes our next Clipper system. These are going to be kind of, just one after another, but really quick movers and not a whole lot of snow associated with them. This system slides into the Great Lakes on Friday, and that's really where we see most of the snow. Some spots downwind of the lakes could see some substantial amounts, maybe 4 to 5 inches in the higher amounts. But overall, elsewhere, maybe an inch or so. Places like Buffalo, Erie, Green Bay could pick pick up a couple of flakes, but not a whole lot in the way of snowfall, which of course is good news when we consider we are ready for spring. Big picture look on Friday, a lot of sunshine. Look at that, guys. This deserves some applause, I think. Finishing out our work week with mild highs, sunny skies take us into Saturday. We, of course, have those snow showers for parts of New England, but otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. Now, some rain and snow to watch on Sunday for our friends out west and a couple of showers for parts of the plains, but I think the 70s along the Gulf Coast with a whole lot of sunshine is the winning spot on Sunday for me.
They're excited. It's been so long, I think, for them.
Yes, and we know they don't do well with like 50s. So.
Right, exactly. They're not in the best.
Right,
50s.
correct.
All right.
We love it. Thank you, Angie. Well, you also know we love a good space story. Well, this relatively quiet weather could be good news for SpaceX. The company is set to launch a new robotic lunar lander to the moon's south pole tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. The spacecraft, which is named Athena, was built by Texas-based Intuitive Machines. Now, on its weeks-long mission, the robot will drill down to study the chemical makeup of rocks and soil beneath the moon's surface, and it's also going to look for possible subsurface water sources.
Athena is scheduled to launch on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Could land on the moon as early as next Thursday. This is the first space flight in a series of missions set to lift off this week from NASA and SpaceX. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Not just eggs, you're likely going to shell out more the next time you go out for a burger or steak dinner. Later in the hour, we're going to take a closer look at the rising costs of meat.
Up first, though, deal or no deal. A deal for rare earth minerals in Ukraine could potentially be in the works. The latest up next. We are back with the latest on the effort to end the war in Ukraine. According to reporting from the Financial Times, Kyiv has agreed to terms with Washington on a minerals deal. It's an effort to improve Ukraine's relations with the Trump administration. Now, NBC News has not obtained a copy of the framework of this agreement.
This could be the first sign of progress toward peace as Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters its fourth year.
NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us with the latest on this one. Molly, good morning. So tell us about this deal and why Ukraine would potentially agree to this.
Savannah, Joe, good morning to you. And we actually do have some new information. Ukraine's prime minister is speaking this morning, and we're expecting President Zelensky to speak as well. So we'll keep you posted if we get any new lines from the Ukrainian president. But the prime minister has given us a little bit more information. He says Ukraine's government will today authorize the agreement for signing. The U.S. has prepared a final version of the minerals agreement, he says, which envisions the creation of a joint investment fund, and also says the agreement is directly connected to security guarantees for Ukraine. And Savannah, to your question, why Ukraine would sign this, it is because that is the #1 priority for Ukraine, for this government, that there are security guarantees. Now, it could all be wrapped up by later this week. One U.S. administration official who is involved in these negotiations tells my colleague Von Hilliard that this could all be signed when Zelensky visits D.C. on Friday. Excuse me.
So, Molly, is Russia reacting at all to this?
So we're certainly watching and monitoring for any reaction from the Kremlin. No new reaction from these new lines just in the last hour. But on Monday, President Putin told state media that they could also offer access to mineral resources, including parts of Russian-occupied Ukraine. To the Trump administration, Putin said Russia has an order of magnitude more resources of this kind than Ukraine. He was talking about Russia's reserves in the north and the Far East, as well as in Russian-occupied Donbass region. So we will certainly stay on to see if there's any new reaction this morning, guys.
Molly, also this comes as the Kremlin's contradicting comments Trump made earlier this week when he said that Russia will accept European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine. What more can you tell us about that?
So part of the conversation around security guarantees is possibly the conversation about putting European peacekeepers inside Ukraine. Now, on Monday, President Trump asserted that not only the war could be over within weeks, but that President Putin would definitely agree to having European boots on the ground. Now, at negotiations in Riyadh, though, Russia's foreign minister made this clear. We haven't heard kind of more clear language from the Kremlin or from the foreign minister. He said it was absolutely unacceptable, even calling it a direct threat. Now, the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said they are monitoring these reports with concern, but this should all shake out in the deal when we talk about those key security guarantees that Ukraine is looking for.
All right, Molly, thank you so much.
More international news now. A massive power outage in Chile has left millions in the dark, and it's paralyzing the country.
Matt Bodner joins us with that and some other news. Matt, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. The Chilean government has deployed the army and national police across the country to enforce this curfew, of course, a response to the devastating power outage that has taken most of the country offline. The outage began yesterday afternoon, has impacted 8 million households. In the capital of Santiago, residents found themselves suddenly stranded in elevators and even on the subway. Power had been restored by midnight to 90% of residential consumers, with the remainder of the grid restoration promised today. Schools, however, in the affected areas will remain closed through Wednesday. Moving along now to South Korea, where the birth rate rose last year for the first time in 9 years. This is believed to be spurred on by a surge of marriages in the country. South Korea, for the record, has one of the world's longest life expectancies, but also one of the lowest birth rates. The increase in births in 2024 was up 3.6% over 2023, with the birth rate of 0.5 births per woman. South Korea needs to hit 2.1 per woman to stabilize its population, and the government has a target of 1 birth by 2023. 1 birth per woman, of course. And we will wrap up things in France, where the search is on for 2 thieves who used a stolen credit card to buy a lottery ticket that won $525,000. Police investigation is yet to find the thieves who stole the credit card from its owner's apartment, but they are believed to be homeless. The credit card's owner is now making a public appeal for the thieves to come forward. They have the winning ticket, after all, and he's offering to split the winnings with them. The victim's lawyer says his client, in this very specific context, is, quote, extremely happy to have had his credit card stolen.
Usually doesn't work out that way, but hopefully they can all share in the winnings or something.
That is interesting.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Coming up, music to your ears. The program is helping teens turn hip-hop into therapy.
Yeah, when we come back, we're going to explain how it's giving young people a way to deal with life's everyday struggles. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. Time for our weekly medical checkup. We're taking a look at how many women might be dealing with early signs of menopause without even knowing it.
Yeah, plus we're going to talk about new research that suggests that too many protein supplements could be impacting the mental health of young men.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Vin Gupta joins us to discuss some of these health headlines. Dr. Gupta, good to have you with us. So let's start with this study. It's the University of Virginia Health System finding many women don't realize they're experiencing symptoms of perimenopause. So talk about what that is and what the symptoms are.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. You know, this is the time between the onset of menopause, and usually it can happen as early as age 30 to 35. It goes often diagnosed because we don't really talk about it, but it's the set of symptoms: fatigue, irritability, just an inability, myalgias, a predisposition to migraines that can afflict younger women. And frankly, they just don't talk about it, and they don't get treatment. Potentially hormonal treatment is something that they could consider. So in terms of doctor's orders here, don't suffer in silence. Make an appointment with your primary care doctor and then share these symptoms because there is potentially treatment.
Interesting. Okay, now let's look at a study that found that the Mediterranean diet, we hear so much about this diet, it may lower your risk of developing some types of cancers. What types of cancers are there? And remind us what this diet is and why it's so good.
Yeah, well, so yet another study here, Savannah, on the Mediterranean diet. What the study found was that there is a benefit to reducing cervical, prostate, colorectal cancer across the board. For women, it was any type of cancer. There was a reduction if they followed a Mediterranean diet for at least a year. And this was really regardless, Savannah, of body mass index, of weight. And so it really, if you adhere to this diet, there's benefits to heart health, but also to cancer risk reduction here for both men and women. And so, you know, it remains to be true. A plant-based diet, doctor's orders, is the way to go, and red meat as a treat, that's really the way to be thinking about it.
Yeah, and I was just listening to something today that says, like, it's so important to get, like, a variety of plants and remembering that those can be, you know, beans, different types of greens, different types of fruits. As long as you're getting in that variety every single day, it can make such a huge difference in your health. All right, before we go, let's talk about young men overusing muscle-building supplements and whether that could be a sign of body image issues. A new study suggests it might be. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, Joe, this study looked at basically young boys and young men, sort of that late teen into early adulthood, that group, and that there was a predisposition to body dysmorphia, really focused, and they use the term obsessed with body muscle tone, muscle mass, and they tended to use at least one or more forms of protein supplementation. And unfortunately, this was linked to body dysmorphia, just this obsession. And so really the focus here should be set realistic goals, don't overdo it with supplements, really no more than one supplement. And really my concern here as a doc here is overuse of things like testosterone off-label, which can be linked to some serious side effects. So that's really the concern here.
All right. Dr. Ben Gupta, thank you so much. Appreciate
Important info. Thank you. Well, now let's talk mental health. Some are using hip hop as a way to heal. In Cleveland, a program called Cope Dealer is helping Black teens turn their emotions into lyrics using hip hop as a form of therapy. Now, similar programs are popping up across the country, giving young people a new way to cope with life struggles. NBC's Maya Brown has the story.
Get this money. Today might be cloudy, but tomorrow gonna be sunny. Whether it's recording in the sound booth or brainstorming rhymes, these students are using hip-hop to turn their feelings into flow. And it's all through the Cope Dealer program out of Cleveland, Ohio.
We're dealing coping skills. We're dealing actual healing techniques.
The mental health awareness workshop runs for 14 weeks and helps teenagers make music to deal with daily stressors.
You have to make mental health fun and creative, and this is the best way to do it.
A way that is culturally competent. A lack of that understanding is a reason only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receive it, according to the American Psychiatric Association. Licensed therapist and program facilitator Jerome Cash says hip-hop therapy can help change that.
Studies show that mental health and hip-hop bridges the gap where more African-American youth can relate.
This group of young Black men who call themselves the Cope Kings were a part of the 2022 cohort.
I never really thought to use it as something that could help me out when I really needed it.
The program helped them manage their emotions through tools like journaling and breath management. Trayvon Stearns tried traditional therapy, but says it wasn't a good fit.
I lost all 3 of my aunties when, just over the last 3 years. I learned, some of the coping methods that I was using first is not as healthy as I thought it was.
It's a form of therapy gaining traction in other parts of the country. This hip-hop therapy studio program at Mott Haven Community High School in the Bronx has become a lifeline for many students.
A lot of the kids we're working with have either been in foster care, there's been some sort of abuse, they've been locked up at a young age.
Paul says he's seen how the program allows many to open up in a short amount of time.
It allows them to get to a point where they can speak about it and be able to really accept what occurred and what happened and move forward from it, right? And rewrite their narrative.
When you fall down, pick yourself up. A situation, you kind of forget what's really going on with their music. I feel like I can put my situations part by part and really understand what it is.
Some of the young men we spoke to say after picking apart their problems, they learned how to put themselves back together.
Meeting them where they're at, going to their environments where they feel safe and they're already in helps them to open up and be vulnerable.
Maya Brown, NBC News.
Power of music right there. All right. Coming up, a sign of the times. Joann, the iconic fabric store chain, announcing it's closing all locations nationwide.
But are more big names about to do the same thing? Up next, we're going to look at the reckoning for the retail industry. Stay with us. Welcome back. From eggs to milk to coffee, prices at the grocery store keep going up. Well, now your next burger or steak could also cost you a little more. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky explains why beef prices are now on the rise.
On his California cattle ranch,
come on, girls.
Kevin Kester says he's just trying to stay afloat.
Biggest challenge we're facing right now is the cost of doing business.
The fifth-generation rancher now operates with half the cattle he used to have.
The lifeblood of your family essentially runs right through this herd.
It does. This is our lifeline. We don't have anything else.
He'd love to rebuild his herd, but says he's been forced to sell off cattle due to drought. Now Kester and ranchers nationwide are caught in a supply and demand struggle, driving beef prices up. The contributing causes converging. The industry facing rising interest rates, high grain prices, and a shrinking U.S. cattle inventory, the smallest it's been since 1951.
Ranchers and cattle processors are facing really high costs to do business right now, and so that means the beef that we buy at the grocery store is ultimately going to be more expensive.
Popular cuts like USDA sirloin steaks now near record highs. Ground beef as well, selling for 43% more than 5 years ago. This on top of the increase in egg prices hitting consumers due to the avian flu. The average price of eggs up 53% compared to a year ago. Back on the ranch, Kester says they've weathered storms before, but this one hits different.
I'm optimistic about the future, but it's going to take a lot of hard work in order to make our business, our family operations successful for the future generations.
Experts say that it's not going to take months, but years before herds nationwide can grow back to the point where they adequately meet supply. We'll send it back to you.
Morgan, thank you.
The retail industry also feeling the pinch this year. The fabric and craft store chain Joann recently announced all of its stores are closing. As NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans reports, experts are now warning a record number of major retailers could follow suit.
For people who love to shop at Joann, the fabric store with about 800 locations around the U.S., time is running out.
I just finished a quilt and I said, oh my God, where am I going to go now?
You like to go in and touch and feel and look and colors, see if it matches things when you're making stuff. You can't do that online.
But now the one-time largest fabrics retailer in the country, which has 19,000 employees, is closing all of its stores.
I'm going to be sorry to see this go.
It's just part of what's expected to be a record-setting year of 15,000 retail store closures, with Party City, Big Lots, Walgreens, and Macy's just some of the companies shuttering locations.
We've got policy upheaval with tariffs. We've got demand upheaval in terms of competition.
John Mercer is the head of global research at Coresight, a firm focused on technology's impact on retail.
It's not how much consumers are spending, it's all the other factors around retail.
Yeah, we think it's the context. We think consumer spending is pretty strong. It's where that spending goes.
Massive summer sheen haul.
He says online discount retailers like Temu and Shein are eating into many brick and mortar businesses as shoppers grow frustrated with poor customer service and locked up goods in stores. They're also chasing the cheapest prices. Adding to the trouble for retailers, Americans are growing more pessimistic about the economy. The Consumer Confidence Index down almost 7%, the biggest monthly decline in almost 4 years. The record number of store closures expected this year raises the question, what's to become of the real estate occupied by the retailers in all this upheaval?
All right, Christine, thank you.
Well, let's stay on some financial headlines for you. BP is pressing the reset button, funneling more funds into fossil fuel production.
CNBC's Savannah Henao has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. That's right. So BP is shifting course, boosting investments in fossil fuels and cutting renewables. Now, the company will increase spending on oil and gas to $10 billion a year through 2027 and slash investments on transition energy to roughly $2 billion a year. Now, across the energy sector, companies that changed their position in response to a need to lower carbon emissions and curb climate change have returned to focus on oil and gas as they try to boost financial returns. More than 80% of home buyers say expenses from down payments and closing costs are a major hurdle to affording a home. A new Bankrate survey finds 1 in 5 aspiring homeowners say they'll never be able to save enough for a down payment. Now, roughly 3/4 say it will take at least a year, and 1/3 say it will take at least 5 years. About 40% of Americans say now is a bad time to buy a home. And McDonald's won't impose any surcharges on eggs in an effort to attract more customers. Waffle House and Denny's are among the chains that have added extra fees to every egg order. McDonald's is also launching a new $1 Egg McMuffin deal on the app. The fast food giant has been trying to attract more lower to middle income consumers who've been shying away from splurging on dining out due to what else? Inflation.
Those Egg McMuffins are going to be a precious commodity. They'll be
they
resold
really
on the egg black market or something.
Right? That's exactly what I want to eat this morning. Savannah, thank you. Coming up for the love of the game.
When we come back, basketball fans who are visually impaired now have a new way to experience the game like never before. We'll explain. Welcome back. Elmo, the furry red king of social media and longtime resident of Sesame Street, is going viral with another relatable message. On Monday, the Muppet posted on X, I won't use my Elmo voice here, but Elmo is just letting you know Elmo might be a little grouchy today. Nap time didn't go as planned. The message has been sparking all kinds of funny responses. One user says, "Same, Elmo, same." Another writes, "We're all grouchy Elmo. Nothing this year is going as planned." And in a reference to Elmo's long-running feud with Rocco the Rock, someone posted, "Did Rocco visit you in your dreams?" Sleepy Elmo right there. On behalf of all of us at Morning News Now, we do hope that you caught up.
Yeah, from a team of nap takers as well. We can understand. Thanks, Joe. Well, finally this hour, visually impaired basketball fans are getting a new way to experience every play through groundbreaking tech. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson went courtside at the NBA's Portland Trail Blazers to find out more.
It's a big night for Hank Vogel.
Which room are you in?
The 11-year-old is ready to watch an NBA game with his family.
Do you have the headphones?
Hank is visually impaired, but thanks to his hometown team, the Portland Trail Blazers, all the action is right at his fingertips. This haptic tablet relays game data by touch and sound so Hank can follow in real time. And when his favorite player hits a big three,
And Scoot knocks one down.
the celebration is electric.
To actually be in the arena and experience it with everybody else. I almost felt like I was a regular person. I don't know quite how to explain it.
We're doing a translation of the game from a very visual format into a tactile format that's accessible.
Jared Mace and his team of engineers designed the one-court tablet, which translates gameplay into complex vibrations. Users can follow every movement of the ball.
And as you feel vibrations move out of frame, you can shift your hands and start to follow it.
The goal, expanding the tech to other sports. An automated audio feed narrates the action.
Shot. Score.
How hard was that vibration? It's just it's oh, okay. So that's what happened.
Give me the Hank review. What do you think?
I definitely experienced the game way better than I would have because I can kind of have a sense of what's going on.
So no Blazer fan, this is out on a big moment.
To see him be able to really enjoy it in a different way was cool.
Now, this family bonding over a brand new feel for the game. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Portland.
I love that.
cool.
And you got to think they can probably do it with football, with baseball, with
absolutely.
hockey, with so many different sports, soccer.
Hope to see it more. Wow, very cool.
All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, Musk at the table. Today, the billionaire Trump advisor set to attend the first cabinet meeting of the president's new administration. Comes as some voters voice their frustrations to lawmakers over those sweeping slashes to the federal government. Well, in Washington, a dramatic day on Capitol Hill. House Republicans voting to adopt a budget bill that could cut trillions of dollars. We are covering it all. Scary scenes at Chicago's Midway Airport, a Southwest jet forced to abort its landing, all to avoid a private jet that officials say was on the runway without authorization. Pilots' quick-thinking actions that saved passengers from another potential aviation nightmare. Also this morning, the deadly mystery illness sweeping through a Central African country. Experts say it has killed more than 50 people in the last few weeks alone. So where exactly did this unknown disease come from, and why is it spreading so quickly? The doctor is in with what you should know. And tuning out later in the hour concerning new research on just how much screen time kids are getting and why many parents are once again sounding the alarm on the impact of too much time online, becoming one of the defining issues of our generation.
Absolutely.
Right now, we'll dig deeper. Let's begin this hour with President Trump's ongoing efforts to slash the federal workforce and reshape the government.
Later today, Elon Musk is set to attend the first cabinet meeting of the second Trump term, despite not being in the cabinet. It comes amid growing backlash over the Department of Government Efficiency's slash and burn approach to the government, and more confusion over that controversial email that called on workers to list their achievements or face termination. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us. Hey, Peter, good morning.
Savannah and Joe, good morning to both of you. Elon Musk has been President Trump's right-hand man since
The president returned to office here, and even though Elon Musk is not a part of the cabinet, the White House says that he will be in attendance today for the first cabinet meeting, even as he is facing new pushback for his chainsaw approach to cut the federal workforce and spending. In the latest display of Elon Musk's enormous influence across the Trump administration, the tech billionaire who's boasted about taking a chainsaw to the federal government is set to attend President Trump's first cabinet meeting of his second term later today. Multiple cabinet members have already clashed with Musk, directing their staff not to respond to that email to federal workers demanding a list of 5 things they accomplished last week. The president weighing in yesterday after the administration's HR department, the Office of Personnel Management, said responding is voluntary. Musk posting that employees would face termination if they did not respond. NBC's Garrett Haake asking the president for clarity.
Do you see it as voluntary, like OPM has said, or mandatory?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer, I guess you get fired.
Later asked whether Musk is speaking for him by threatening to terminate federal workers.
Everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. You know the old statement, the buck stops here, right?
While President Trump continued to praise the plan,
I think it's a very smart thing.
some Republicans are urging caution as they face backlash at home.
We have to be careful how we message this so it doesn't come across as discompassionate.
While Doge faced more scrutiny this week, Musk's team had touted its published list of savings. But according to the New York Times, Doge revised it to remove its 5 biggest savings after multiple outlets reported errors. And of the contracts it has canceled so far, 40% are not expected to produce any savings, according to an AP analysis of the government's own data. Earlier, 21 members of what was the U.S. Digital Service before it became Doge abruptly resigned, anonymously posting online that they won't use their technical expertise to compromise core government systems, jeopardize American sensitive data, or dismantle critical public services. Musk responding, these were Dem political holdovers who refused to return to the office. They would have been fired had they not resigned. And President Trump also just announced a new plan for what he is branding Trump Gold Cards, $5 million each for wealthy foreigners seeking permanent residency in the U.S. and a path to citizenship. When asked about it, the president said that could include Russian oligarchs if they can afford it. A top advisor said this would essentially replace an existing visa program created by Congress that offers green cards to wealthy foreigners. Savannah and Joe.
All right, Peter, thank you.
President Trump's flurry of action since taking office are leading to protests, even acts of peaceful civil disobedience. And that's not just in Washington, but at state houses across the country, with some getting violent. This video from Idaho is going viral. It shows a woman being restrained before she was dragged out of a town hall meeting. Now she's speaking out. NBC's Camila Bernal has more.
We're getting the first reaction from an Idaho woman
There's an opportunity for you to stand up.
removed from a Republican-led town hall.
You're not smart enough to know.
First belittled by the moderator,
And look at this. This little girl is afraid to leave.
before a confrontation breaks out. Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris asking the woman to leave or be arrested, then trying to forcibly remove her.
You out now! You out now! Let's go! This man is assaulting me!
She's then pulled out of her seat by 3 unidentified men in black clothing, later identified as private security.
Show your badge!
Before being dragged onto the floor. Kootenai County Sheriff's Department says Norris was there, but the people who removed the woman were not his deputies. The security company, Lear Asset Management, did not respond to NBC's request for comment. The woman, identified as Teresa Borenpal, has run for the Idaho State House as a Democrat. Writing on Instagram, I could never have imagined my right to free speech and my right to assemble could be stripped in such a violent way. Borenpal did not respond to NBC's request for further comment. In a statement after the video, the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee alleges that Borenpal, quote, relentlessly disrupted the event by verbally attacking the legislators. The committee's chairman, Brent Regan, saying the rules were clear.
We have security here and you'll be escorted out of the building.
Adding in comments to NBC News that, quote, none of this would have happened if she had been respectful of others. The incident just one in a series of protests across the country in response to the president's actions, like former Minnesota Vikings punter Chris Kluwe.
MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement.
Arrested at a Huntington Beach, California City Council meeting last week over a plaque at the town's library that pays homage to the president.
I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience.
Or in Wyoming, when a woman purposely referred to a male lawmaker as Madam Chairman to protest a bill about gender identity.
You can call me Mr. Chairman if you want.
Well, I cannot be compelled to use your preferred pronouns as you have all voted.
With Republicans at the federal level feeling the pressure too. From Wisconsin to Missouri, Oklahoma to Georgia, to a sit-in on Capitol Hill. Federal employees furious over Elon Musk's cuts to the workforce through his Doge agency. The big question now, are Republicans moved to push the president to slow down? Some directly targeted by these protests, like Georgia Congressman Rich McCormick and Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, suggesting to our team that the speed may be a bit much.
I'm all for trimming the government, but I'm all for also doing it in a deliberate manner that allows people to adjust in their lifestyle.
What I'm hearing is that the federal employees have been treated with a level of disregard to their service and to their tenure.
Whether these acts of protest will change Mr. Trump's mind, however, remains an open question.
Our thanks to Camila Bernal for that story.
Turning now to the Republican victory on Capitol Hill. This morning, the GOP is one step closer to passing a sweeping budget bill that could cut up to $2 trillion from federal spending. The process is still in its early stages, but with President Trump's help, last night Speaker Mike Johnson did manage to muscle through a vote in the House. Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has a recap of the drama.
Now, early in the night, House Republicans were on the verge of pulling a planned vote on their budget because they did not have the votes. In fact, many members had already left Capitol Hill when President Donald Trump intervened, convincing a group of wayward Republicans to vote yes. And while this vote narrowly passed by a slim 2-vote margin, the bill is still a long way from becoming law, and it could be a bumpy road ahead. Overnight, a win for President Trump, but it wasn't easy.
Thank you all for staying on a long night. We got it done.
House Republicans voting for the budget plan Trump endorsed, aiming to fund his mass deportation plan, implement a massive $4.5 trillion tax cut, and slash between $1.5 and $2 trillion from the federal budget. Every Democrat voted no, including one who flew back with her 4-week-old son.
We were here to fight for all the kids in Colorado.
Hardline GOP deficit hawks believe the steep spending cuts aren't enough and promise to push for more as the process moves ahead to the next step, forcing the president to play a key role in shoring up support.
Look, Trump has been an incredible ally in this whole process, talking to anybody that we asked that really needed to clarify things.
Some Republicans holding out earlier in the day.
Where we're going with this thing, it's just ridiculous.
Convinced after speaking with Trump.
But the president assured me that he would work towards cuts. He's never lied to me. He's like my wife. She's never lied to me, and I've always trusted her.
A similar bill passed in the Senate, but only deals with half of Trump's agenda. The two sides will now need to work out their differences.
I'm confident we can put 51 on the Senate floor.
The narrow margins will make this a difficult task, especially because Republicans want trillions in cuts, but won't say where those cuts are coming from. 86% of the federal budget comes from defense, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which covers health care costs for disabled and low-income Americans. It will be difficult to cut that much without impacting the programs millions of Americans rely on.
Can you get to $1.5 trillion without cutting Medicare and Medicaid?
I'm not cutting benefits to Medicaid recipients.
The Senate has already passed their version of this budget plan, but it only deals with about half of the agenda items on President Trump's list. The bill passed in the House last night would have a very difficult time getting 51 votes in the Senate, so the two chambers will have to decide if they want to try and pass one massive bill or break it into parts. At this point, President Trump has said that his preference is one big, beautiful bill.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
We turn now to the latest scary scene at a busy U.S. airport and the quick-thinking Southwest pilots who got their aircraft out of harm's way. This Southwest jet landing at Chicago's Midway Airport was forced to perform what's known as a go-around maneuver, all to avoid a private jet that the FAA says was not allowed to be on the runway. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello covers aviation for us and has the latest.
Yeah, FlexJet is the name of that private business jet company, and a spokesperson says it will take immediate action to rectify the situation, with the NTSB and the FAA investigating how and why the pilots of that business jet apparently ignored air traffic control instructions, rolled right onto a runway as an inbound Southwest plane was preparing to land, and those Southwest pilots being held up as heroes.
On another busy American runway, yet another close call, this one caught on camera.
Southwest 2504 going around.
It happened Tuesday morning, a Southwest 737 flying in from Omaha, preparing to land at Chicago's Midway Airport, forced to make what the airline is calling a precautionary go-around to avoid colliding with the private jet that the FAA says entered the runway without authorization. After going around, the Southwest plane returned and landed safely at Midway. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy writing on X, "It is imperative that pilots follow the instructions of air traffic controllers. If they do not, their licenses will be pulled."
These types of serious incursions have been going down over the past couple of years, but hopefully they won't start going back up again.
The FAA's 2024 database shows the rate of serious runway incursions, close calls, decreased by 69% compared to the previous year. But the country is also still facing a shortage of 3,000 to 4,000 air traffic controllers, many working mandatory overtime.
We were so oblivious to what was happening because the pilot was so calm.
Kaylee Masick and Emily Novak were on the Southwest flight and say they didn't realize how severe the outcome could have been until they saw the video.
Hard for it to sink in at first that you were actually in a situation like that.
Tuesday's close call, the latest in a string of alarming aviation crashes and disasters. Last month, an Army Black Hawk helicopter crashed into an American Eagle regional jet over the Potomac River near Reagan Airport. 67 people killed. And just last week, a Delta plane arriving in Toronto crash-landed and flipped upside down, catching fire. Dozens injured, but amazingly, no one was killed.
I can see that the public would be concerned about this, but aviation is still incredibly safe.
We also had a situation here at Reagan Airport yesterday in which an inbound American Airlines flight had to go around, wave off, because another plane that was departing from the same runway had not yet cleared the runway. The FAA and the airlines calling that a standard go-around. By the way, the FAA and the NTSB have taken a lot of steps in recent years to mitigate these so-called close calls. There are runway traffic lights, ground radar, collision avoidance systems, but very often it comes down to the pilots and their quick action, like those at Chicago Midway, to avoid an absolute disaster. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Well, that measles outbreak in Texas that we've told you about, it is quickly becoming a crisis. State health officials are now reporting 124 confirmed cases. That is a sharp increase from the 90 cases reported last Friday and nearly double the total reported just a week ago.
It's not just Texas. Other states now seeing cases, too. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now with the latest. Sam, good morning.
Guys, good morning. Yeah, the footprint here is really widening. So far, a total of 8 states have reported at least one measles infection this year, but Texas has by far the most, as you mentioned, more than 120 confirmed cases. An outbreak, by the way, considered 3 or more related cases, which means now you have Texas, New Mexico, New Jersey, and Georgia, which all qualify with the vast majority of infections because the patients were not vaccinated. The total number of cases is only expected to climb.
West Texas today is trying to get a handle on a surging measles crisis, now up to a whopping 124 cases, according to the Texas Department of Health. What started in Gaines County on the state's panhandle has spread to 8 other counties, from Texas's northern tip to Lubbock, a county of 300,000, as the number of confirmed infections has doubled each of the last 2 weeks. How alarming do you find that rate of spread?
The rate of spread is alarming, but also not surprising. Measles is literally one of the most contagious viruses that we know, much more contagious than COVID or the flu.
Texas health officials say of the 124 confirmed cases, more than 100 are patients under 18 years old, and a mere 5 cases involve those who are vaccinated. Frightening for parents like Karina Perez from Lubbock, whose 18-month-old daughter is immunocompromised.
If you don't vaccinate your children, we will run into them in those public places.
Spanning the nation, neighboring New Mexico has 9 cases, Georgia 3, New Jersey 3, and Alaska, California, New York, and Rhode Island have all reported at least 1, though those numbers are almost certain to climb.
We've been seeing a disturbing increase in the numbers of people who have not been getting vaccinated.
The CDC says 2 rounds of the MMR vaccine, usually given by the age of 6, is 97% effective against the virus. But those with immunocompromising conditions or those with higher exposure can still face elevated risk from a pool of people who aren't vaccinated. While the national standard for vaccination is 95% or higher, the reality is much lower for many states. Only 11 actually reach that mark. And in Gaines County, Texas, the vaccination rate hovers around 80%, creating ripe conditions for more infection.
Sam, what should people do if they're hearing this and they're worried about their own vaccination status?
So especially if you don't know what it is so dependent upon when you were born and when you actually got those shots. If it's before 1957, it means you probably don't need to do anything because measles was so widespread at the time.
Wow.
You likely already have immunity from infection. Between 57 and 1968, the vaccine was not as effective. You should probably get that booster. 68 to 1989, the guidance at the time, guys, was only 1 shot, not 2. So you would do well to get a booster, but it's still 95% protection from just 1 shot. But especially in our line of work, if you're either going to be in healthcare settings or covering communities where there is widespread infection, you would do good to get a booster shot there as well.
Wow. Really good info. Sam, thank you so much.
I'll be here all day. Thank you.
This morning, a recently unsealed court document is revealing new details in the case against Brian Kohberger. He's the man charged with murdering 4 University of Idaho students at their off-campus home in 2022. Now, this comes as his defense team has filed a new motion trying to take the death penalty off the table as a sentencing option, indicating they might be preparing to argue Kohberger has autism. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett is here to break it down for us. Laura, good morning.
Hey, guys, good morning to you. This is actually a first. An autism diagnosis isn't something we have heard from the defense team before, and it raises plenty of new questions. But all the details here, guys, still largely under wraps.
We are back on the record in State v. Kohberger.
After a string of recent losses in court this morning, a new defense strategy. Signs that Brian Kohberger's lawyers may be preparing to argue he's on the autism spectrum in a bid to get the death penalty off the table. While the details of the actual motion are still under seal, experts in the state say it's unlikely to succeed.
Idaho has eliminated the insanity defense in criminal cases. So an attempt to suggest that autism-related symptoms would automatically constitute any kind of defense in a criminal case is probably destined to fail.
The surprise move comes as the defense adds its newest team member, a California-based lawyer specializing in cases involving forensic DNA.
Brett Payne, last is spelled P-A-Y.
While a newly unsealed court transcript reveals how local police in Moscow, Idaho, zeroed in on Brian Kohberger in mid-December 2022, after 4 University of Idaho students, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves were found stabbed to death in their off-campus home. A previous judge entered a not guilty plea on Kohberger's behalf, but now as trial inches closer, his defense strategy has come into sharper focus. His lawyer suggesting unknown male blood was found in 2 other places at the crime scene, the railing of a staircase and a glove found outside of the home. In that newly unsealed transcript, the defense asking Detective Brett Payne why they did not immediately try to track down unknown male B. Payne responding, "At that point in time, we had already received Mr. Kohberger's name." Meanwhile, the state also revealing in a new motion prosecutors plan to present a 3D model of the house where the students were killed for the trial this August after the university demolished it last year.
And Joe, in another new court filing, the state now saying that any attempt by the defendant to present an alternate perpetrator theory without any evidence connecting that person to the homicides is only going to mislead and confuse that jury. It'll ultimately be up to the judge to decide what to do about that, Joe.
All right, Laura, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Now it is time for your Wednesday forecast. Let's start with the latest on a Clipper system that's packing some rain and a little snow. Don't you like when I do weather talk?
Meteorologist Angie Lasman's here with where it's headed. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. I've taught you well. A Clipper system, indeed. That's a fast-moving system that emerges out of Canada. And really, that's exactly what's going to happen here for us over the next day or so. We've got a couple of these kind of systems that are going to work through. But today, here's the one that we're watching. It's bringing us a little rain for our friends in Chicago, Lafayette. We've got some of that freezing rain and even some snow across parts of Michigan. This is where we're going to see the impacts for the first half of the day. And then notice what happens here as the day goes on. That light snow, yes, for Michigan and even Wisconsin, but then we start to shift most of the rain from Pennsylvania down to Missouri, and we see some of that snow and kind of freezing rain, the wintry mix working into parts of the Northeast here as we get into tomorrow. Notice, though, by the time we get through Friday, snowfall amounts aren't all that impressive. We could see maybe 4 to 5 inches in some interior areas of New England and in those higher elevations and potentially downwind of the lakes, but that's where the highest amounts are going to be. Notice just about an inch for maybe Syracuse, Buffalo, places like Green Bay, Detroit. You could see a couple of flakes, but nothing that's really going to stick. Down south, we've got some of these fog alerts up for parts of the Gulf Coast along I-10, I-55, I-45 in this area. We're seeing that dense fog in place, hence the reason for the advisory that's going to last through this morning. And the visibilities are really down considerably. Newberry looking at a 1/4 mile, 0 mile visibility for Beaumont. So this is going to be a little tough of a kind of go when it comes to the early morning commute, again, along I-10, I-55, and I-45. We'll start to see that fog lift and it'll mix in and we'll see some better conditions here as the morning goes on, but we've got to wait a little while for that. So extra time on the commute is going to be a good idea. Temperature-wise, this is what's gotten all the attention over the past couple of days. We finally have had some relief from the bitter cold temperatures last year. We've got 70s on tap in Memphis today. Notice some of these places running more than 20 degrees above normal. The Dakotas, you're going to hit the high 50s. That is not normal for this time of year, but we'll take it. 41 for our friends in Green Bay. We've got high 60s for Albuquerque. Out west, we could see some record highs potentially. We've got the 80s for LA and Tucson. Sounds like pool weather to me. Upper 50s in New York for tomorrow. That's still pretty good for this time of year. High 60s in Richmond, and we keep the 70s for the southeast. We'll still be really honestly running above normal for most of the country, guys, even as we head into the weekend. Then we start to see a dip in some of those temperatures, especially for our friends up north like us. 30s in New York on Sunday, but we've got the 50s on Saturday, which is the more important day of the weekend.
What a swing. Exactly. A reminder, though, winter's not over.
You know what, Joe? You're right, though. I can't argue with that.
Winter's over.
We were just talking in the makeup room this morning about how you always post that thing that's like, full spring. Like we're in like
indeed.
step 1.
Don't put your coats away just yet.
The 10 steps
Sunday's
to
forecast.
summer.
Bring out all the shorts.
Exactly.
Thanks, Angie. There's much more to come on this hour of morning news now, including the growing concern over how much screen time younger kids are getting. The eye-opening new research parents should know about this morning.
First, after the break, a deadly illness sweeping across Central Africa, killing dozens over just the last few weeks. But officials don't know what caused it all. We're going to have more on that next. We're back now with new details about a mystery illness. It's already killed more than 50 people and made hundreds of others sick in a country in Central Africa.
The World Health Organization believes it started in a village in the Democratic Republic of Congo after 3 children ate a bat and then died. And this still unknown illness works fast. Some people have died within 48 hours of getting symptoms.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now with more on this. Dr. Patel, good morning. So let's just start with how this could have started. I mean, we know bats carry viruses like Ebola. What might have happened when these kids came into contact with one?
Yeah, so the thing about bat transmission, and this is obviously everybody is thinking what we're all kind of thinking, COVID, right? This is almost now 5 years to the day where we heard about a potential kind of thing that happened from people eating potentially bats. So, of course, this is kind of sparking concern, but it's not new to see bats transmitting disease because it's actually quite easy for these very small animals through membranes, ingestion, through all sorts of even inhalation. You don't have to actually eat anything. You can just even be around a sick bat and inhale and it's pretty easy to transmit many of these viruses as well as bacteria.
Dr. Patel, we understand this is spreading quickly. Symptoms also, as Joe pointed out, Ebola a moment ago, symptoms mirror that: fever, vomiting, internal bleeding. We understand it to have a 12% fatality rate. Why is it hitting so hard and so fast?
Yeah, so let me give people a little bit of comfort, because the numbers are disturbing, and it's very important actually to emphasize why we need a global response. We are hearing most of our information from the World Health Organization. I just want to remind people that that's probably one of the most important reasons that the United States should continue to work with the World Health Organization to do exactly this. It spreads very quickly, often in countries with poor resources. So if that exact thing were to happen in countries like the United States, we would not see this quick spread, because it's usually hard to identify not just the disease, but it's also hard for sick individuals to get on-site resources and the support that they need. So the quick spread is not as concerning as the inability to identify what's happening. I do have confidence, though, because we do see pockets of this around the world, that with time we will figure out what it is. We know it's not Ebola. We know it's not one of the other main causes of hemorrhagic fever, which is the Marburg virus. But in my experience working abroad, we usually do tend to find out once we kind of get resources there to do accurate diagnosis. It's hard for people to get to the places to make that diagnosis.
So because those viruses you mentioned have been ruled out, I mean, do we have an idea of what other causes could be behind this mystery illness? And talk about why it is tough to figure out the exact cause.
Yeah, so there are a number of causes. This is work I used to do a long time ago. We would have like a series of panel tests that we would look for everything, even things like malaria, Joe and Savannah, that you might not say, well, why would it cause death that quickly? You can see this exact kind of time pattern, not necessarily every single symptom, but you could imagine that even diseases such as malaria, we're talking about a listeria outbreak in the United States. You can see diseases such as that causing this type of death. You can also see other common viruses, including other coronaviruses, that can cause this type of symptom pattern. And I think that's exactly what people on the ground are trying to do. Hospitals trying to identify what the cause is, getting samples from patients, and trying to contain something that could be infectious from human to human.
Dr. Patel, thank you so much.
Great to have you with us. All right, now to more international headlines. During a visit to a military academy, North Korea's leader has called for the development of a modern army to be prepared for any potential war.
NBC's Matt Bodner has that and some other world news. Matt, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning. Kim's comments were made during a visit to a military academy, and they, of course, come up against the backdrop of North Korea's participation in the war in Ukraine. The country has recently signed defensive pacts with Russia and has already sent some 10,000 troops to Russia to fight in the war. Reports suggest that Kim's troops have struggled with the realities of this very modern war, and during his last visit to this very military academy, he criticized the school's work, emphasizing that students must be learning about the, quote, actual experiences of modern warfare. South Korean intelligence has suggested that Kim is readying an additional deployment of troops to Russia. Moving on over now to Taiwan, where the Chinese military has established a live-fire military training zone just 46 miles off the coast. No advance notice was given, and it comes after Taiwan seized a Chinese crewed cargo ship suspected of cutting an undersea cable. Taiwan says that the live-fire zone has been set up within international shipping lanes coming in and out of the island's busiest and most important shipping port. We'll wrap up this hour right here in the UK with more wigs this time. This time, a woman has admitted to using wigs and other disguises as part of a scheme to fraudulently take the UK citizenship exam for more than 24 foreigners. This test has 24 questions and tests applicants on British history, values, and social norms. The woman, according to the Home Office, quote, meticulously selected disguises and test center locations across the country to evade the authorities. Now, I have heard this test can be tricky. Here's a taste for you guys. Who was the first person in the world to run a 4-minute mile? The hint is he's British.
The King.
It's good guess. Sir Roger Bannister.
Okay. That is tricky. That's like you got to know your stuff there. My
what
goodness.
A racket she was running.
I would
though.
hire someone in a wig too. All right.
Matt, thanks.
Coming up, tariffs and soaring costs at the grocery store are weighing on many Americans' minds this morning.
What's best to buy in bulk, and where can you find some deals in times of economic uncertainty? Stay with us. We're watching your wallet next. We're back now with the new numbers out this week that show how Americans are feeling increasingly negative about the economy.
This month, consumer confidence had its largest drop since August of 2021. Now we're less than a week from potential U.S. tariffs on Canada and Mexico, meaning everyday items could get even more expensive.
NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is here to talk about exactly what these things are that are getting more expensive, how we can save. Christine, good morning. Great to have you. Where else could we start besides on eggs? It's what we're all talking about. A lot of us are seeing it in our grocery store. What's the latest?
So USDA with a brand new forecast, a stark forecast about how much more prices will rise this year, saying 41% more price increase for eggs. Last year was something like 53%. Just in January, this forecast was only a 20% increase this year. So it shows you the bird flu is still a significant problem. Interesting also, the McDonald's telling its customers it will not put a surcharge on eggs the way you've seen Denny's and Waffle House. This is the statement from its chief impact officer saying, look, unlike others making news recently, you definitely won't see McDonald's USA issuing surcharges on eggs. That just shows you the state of play here.
Right.
Eggs
you have to put a statement out.
That you have to let people know egg prices are very expensive. They will continue to be more expensive. We're probably a year out from seeing some relief for egg prices.
It's not just eggs right now. More and more, we're talking about beef prices going up.
Anybody who's been to the store to buy a steak, which is sort of, my family likes to have a steak meal every week or every 2 weeks. Steak prices are back near record highs. You look at sirloin, $11.97 a pound. Ground beef is up $5.55. Look at over 5 years, how much those prices are up. Inflation part of it, but also huge demand. And producers tell us they have struggled with drought and with extreme weather that has been stressful for their herds. And so you've got a supply and a demand problem at the same time.
Oh, gosh, that sounds like climate change impacting those prices, too. Christine, we've had so much talk about tariffs. Give us the latest on how that's going and how it might impact our wallets.
A couple of important deadlines are coming up for new tariffs that will be in the mix here. The president really believes in reordering how global trade is done, and that could be disruptive in the near term for people. So among the things we're going to see, he has said they're on track for 25% tariffs with Canada and Mexico. A lot of stuff crosses those borders, folks. Also, steel and aluminum tariffs, March 12th. Even like the canned vegetable industry is worried about how much more it's going to cost to can things. Look at there. Lots of different things could be affected, from tequila to beer to avocados, maple syrup, upholstered furniture. A lot of that comes from Canada. Who knew? And, of course, cars and appliances.
Like our funny little emojis there.
Cute. Good margarita graphic. We knew what that was. You're so good at giving us tips. What are the things we should be buying now? What are things maybe we can wait a little bit to stock?
So we've been calling around and asking, for example, car repair shops, if you need a car repair that's pretty important, get that done, because parts could cost more in the days and months ahead. If you need to buy a new car, there's a forecast out there that a new car, if these tariffs go in full effect, the president is saying, Canada and Mexico, the U.S. auto industry is completely embedded with these two countries. So it could be $3,000 more for the price of a new car. What I would say don't rush out and do is start stockpiling avocados. I mean, first of all, they're going to spoil. So be careful about the perishable produce. Also, it's just counterproductive for your family budget. You might have to make some tweaks down the road, but I wouldn't be rushing out there a la post-COVID, toilet paper hoarding. I don't.
Or like egg hoarding.
I don't recommend it. I just don't recommend it. I mean, you can live without eggs for a week, right?
Right.
Yeah, and some businesses can.
That's true, but let's just try to put it in perspective.
Good point.
Thanks, Christine. You're welcome. Well, legendary auction house Christie's is shaking up the art world with an AI-generated art auction. The company is calling it a new frontier, but not everyone's loving it. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung takes us there.
It's an art auction unlike any other.
Generate an image of a pigeon wearing a suit.
For 258 years, Christie's has auctioned off everything from Picasso's to Princess Diana's dresses. But for the first time, they're now auctioning off an entire collection of pieces made using artificial intelligence.
If it just gets people thinking about what creativity means within computers and AI, I think that's a great conversation to start.
Artist Alexander Reben is one of the artists featured in the augmented intelligence auction. Reben's work, a living, breathing canvas, painted by an AI-powered robot that adds a square inch of paint every time a bid is placed on the piece.
What is the meaning of this work?
Well, that's a interesting question. I don't want to put a particular meaning on it because I feel like the type of art I make allows reflection for what people want to take away from it. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be.
The piece, which could sell for upwards of $1.7 million, is one of more than 30 pieces being sold as part of Christie's AI sale.
Can you do a little dance for me?
I love to. Dancing is such a beautiful way to express creativity.
While pieces like this are giving some artists the opportunity of a lifetime, some critics say the AI tools being used to train them are using copyrighted material without permission.
They're built off of artists' work without consent, credit, or compensation, which does not constitute fair use, and it's dramatically affecting our jobs and livelihoods.
Concept artist and illustrator Reed Southen is one of the artists behind a letter calling on Christie's to cancel the auction. More than 6,000 artists signed the letter.
We believe in the auction, around a third of the artworks use these types of unethical models. And so with the open letter specifically, we're asking Christie's to not support or condone that sort of thing.
Christie's kicked off that auction anyway on February 20th, telling the public they welcome the debate it started.
Artists have been influenced by other artists for centuries. We're looking at something new and something interesting that will forever change the scope of art.
Christie's director of digital art, Nicole Sales-Giles, says the auction house is merely meeting a growing demand for AI art. In 2018, they sold an AI-generated portrait by a French art collective for $432,000.
How do you make sure that in an auction like this, where there's so much technology, that you're not accidentally selling something that is actually stealing from someone else?
Yeah, I mean, all the artists in this sale, we are very, very in close contact with. We know exactly how they're using AI in their practice, what they're doing and how they're using it. But a lot of it is their own training data.
Southen says it's not clear to him that Christie's did enough to make sure the featured AI pieces didn't train themselves on other artists' work without permission.
I think that what they're doing is sort of building this auction on the honor system and not really doing their due diligence on these things because there's money to be made.
Artists like Reben embrace the debate.
So painters were afraid of the camera when it came out because they thought it would do things like replace landscape painting. But now a lot of painters actually paint from pictures they take. I think AI is going to help people in that way. It's going to help them come up with new ideas, help them iterate in their imagination, and maybe they'll take that back to traditional things.
So inspiration or infringement for AI art, it's in the eye of the beholder. Brian Chung, NBC News.
Some more art meets tech news. A popular software maker is now putting one of its most popular products in the hands of iPhone users for free. Adobe is releasing a free version of Photoshop for users to make their own custom creations. NBC News senior consumer investigative correspondent, News Now anchor Vicky Nguyen, sat down with the company for a quick lesson on how it works.
I've been an iPhone artist for 14 years.
Elise Swopes is an artist and community advocate at Adobe. She walked me through the new free Adobe Photoshop app to demonstrate how easy it is for anyone to create a digital vision board with just a few clicks. A vision board, also known as a dream board, is a collection of images and words that motivate you to reach your goals.
Here is my awesome vision board of New York. Most of these are Adobe stock, which is so incredible.
So you can just search for images that are already available in the app to create your vision board.
Absolutely. I'm just going to go to add from Adobe stock. Here we've got all these pre-selected assets you can use, but I'm just going to be really specific today and do a New York skyline.
Then she helped me give it a try.
Let's make this one.
I said I want to explore Chile this year, learn how to do a pull-up, and I want readers to enjoy my book, Boat Baby.
That was a great example.
That was a great example.
I also said I'd like to get outside more in 2025 and spend quality time with my family.
I also want to get some pictures from the stock. Okay, let's see what comes up when I put in Chile.
Yeah, look at that. You get a bunch of fun stuff.
Adobe has millions of stock images ranging from art and patterns to cityscapes and landmarks, all free for anyone to use, not just for personal vision boards, but to make art too.
Could you print this as a piece of artwork?
100%. So this is actually a poster size file, so I can easily print this.
In just 15 minutes, Elise helped me create this vision board.
It's already adding a nice color to this.
Yeah. While I'm not the most artistic or patient, my producer Jackie played with the app and created this stunning photo board with a mix of her pics and some stock images.
We really want to make it easy for established artists, but also aspiring creators to create something fun.
Our thanks to Vicky Nguyen for her vision and her report. It's important to note this is only available for the iPhone right now, but Adobe says it does plan to have an Android version available later this year.
That's pretty fun. Makes me want to try it out. Coming up, tuning out.
Yeah, why some parents are now sounding the alarm over too much screen time for their younger kids. We're going to dig into some new eye-opening research next. We're back with the growing trouble for Tesla on Wall Street.
CNBC's Silvana Hanau joins us with details there and other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Good morning to you. Yeah, shares of Tesla are edging up today, but the stock has taken it on the chin in recent weeks. They sank 8% yesterday and have lost most of their gains since President Trump won the election in November. Now, that's pushed Tesla's market value below $1 trillion. CEO Elon Musk has lost more than $100 billion in net worth over that stretch, although he's still the world's richest person with a fortune estimated at $380 billion. The latest slide follows reports the long-awaited upgrade to Tesla's partially automated driving system left owners unimpressed. Amazon is hosting an Alexa-focused event today, and the company reportedly plans to introduce an upgraded Alexa experience codenamed Remarkable Alexa, and it's designed to make interactions feel more natural and intuitive, similar to ChatGPT. The enhanced Alexa will likely be priced between $5 and $10 a month and will be able to respond to multiple requests in a single command and even take actions on its own. Reports say Amazon will let device owners stick with the classic Alexa experience if they choose. And meme coins are falling out of fashion. Dogecoin, which is one of the most famous digital coins, has dropped more than 40% in the past month and more than 70% from its peak in 2021. President Trump's official token has fallen about 15% in the past week, and the decline reflects the broader struggle in the crypto market with Bitcoin and Ether both seeing significant losses recently. Investors are becoming more wary about volatility with crypto, especially with meme coins.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much. Got it. Well, this morning, results of a new study are fueling concerns about children and screen time.
The report was released by Common Sense Media. It shows how much time children as young as 2 years old are now averaging on tablets and iPads, usually to play games. NBC News Daily anchor Kate Snow has the details.
You might call it a modern rite of passage, a tablet for a toddler. Ruth Sorak is a working mom of 2 young boys in New Hampshire.
Noah was about 2.5, 3 or so when we introduced iPads. Michael was about 2.5, 3 years old.
New research by Common Sense Media finds by age 2, 40% of children now have their own tablet. By 4 years old, more than half do. Jim Steyer is the founder and CEO of Common Sense Media.
When you heard that figure of 4 in 10 kids by the age of 2 have a tablet of their own, were you surprised?
I was shocked because it's just transforming childhood. It's just transforming the reality of being a little child, but also being a parent of a little child. And the consequences are quite extraordinary on many levels.
Children under 2 are averaging an hour of screen time every day. Ages 2 to 4, over 2 hours of screen time. And 5 to 8-year-olds are spending on average around 3.5 hours on a screen.
The American Academy of Pediatrics says that kids under 18 months old should not have any screen time, and kids between 2 and 5 should limit it to an hour a day. That's not what's happening in the real world.
We are just blowing through all the old standards of digital usage. This digitalization of childhood is occurring at warp speed.
The report also found a shift in what children are doing on screens.
The biggest change among kids under the age of 8 is gaming. The activity of gaming is much more popular now.
And nearly a quarter of kids 8 and under are using tablets to fall asleep at night. The number one reason parents are letting their kids use tablets, it helps occupy their child so they can get things done or take time for themselves. Ruth Sorak did that.
I got to go pee by myself. I know, it allowed me to have a couple minutes to myself where I could maybe sip a cup of coffee or get some work done, just for a minute. I got a quick breather.
Parents told Common Sense Media they see upsides for learning and connecting, but 75 to 80% of the parents express concerns about excessive use, effects on kids' mental health, and exposure to inappropriate material. Ruth grew concerned about her 6-year-old spending too much time on a screen.
I remember there was a time where I said, hey, let's go outside. And he said, no. And he was using the iPad. And I was taken aback because, excuse me, you live to go outside and play and get dirty. So it was jarring.
What's your advice for parents hearing this and going, yeah, but how do I take the tablet away?
There's a famous old expression, just say no. And you can do that actually with a device.
Ruth did exactly that.
I said to my husband, we just have to go cold turkey.
She hid the tablets.
The first 2 days were not fun, and then everything was peace. I got those little people back, those like amazing little people that they are.
Ruth keeps them busy now with sensory bins and Play-Doh. And when they are watching TV, she's careful about what they watch.
We started watching more shows that are less stimulating, like To Give a Mouse a Cookie, which is on Amazon. It's really cute.
Creating an environment that's quite similar to her own upbringing.
I do think about how Mom did this, how she would go outside and play. So it's kind of reminding me of, well, this is the way you grew up, so you had a great childhood, so it's going to be great for them too.
Common Sense Media also found that kids 8 and under are only reading or being read to about an average of half an hour a day. They encourage parents to pay attention to how kids act during and after watching a screen, try to balance out screen time with sleep, connecting with family and friends, time outside, maybe create a family schedule. And they say you can do that with your kids. You can sit down and have a conversation, but ultimately you're the parent, you set the schedule.
Right, but a reminder that we did just fine without these playing out. We played in the street, which was its own danger, but it made us tough.
A reminder that content not appropriate for kids was not as easily accessible.
Yeah, one of the other things that this survey found was that a lot of kids are watching YouTube shorts or they're watching like Instagram or TikTok videos, which are not made for children, to be honest.
Are not.
So
Absolutely.
that can be really inappropriate.
All right, Kate, great reporting. Thank you so much.
Coming up, a cold weather classic like nothing you've seen before.
After the break, we're heading out to the frozen lakes and ponds of Maine, where the competition's heating up during one of the frostiest winters the state has seen in years. That's next. Stick around.
Finally, this hour, this winter in Maine, one of the coldest in years. But on the bright side, those freezing temps ensure many ponds and lakes freeze over so folks can enjoy some winter activities.
Reporter Christian Harsa from our Portland, Maine station was out on the ice where some kids were able to experience their first ice fishing derby.
Kids, friends, and family all out on the ice Sunday catching fish.
Oh, it's a blast. We have fun every time we come out, huh? Always catching fishies?
Yeah. Jordan Bucher, junior and senior, were awake at 4:30 in the morning getting ready for the first outdoor obsession youth ice fishing derby. And the fish were biting.
A bass and a pickerel and a yellow perch.
Oh, it's the best. I used to love fishing for myself, but now it's definitely for him. He's my fishing buddy for life.
This winter's consistent cold temperatures made planning fishing derbies a little easier compared to years past, when organizer Ethan Rogers says he couldn't even go out onto the ice.
Well, I think last year and the year before, I never even got my ice shack out because it wasn't safe enough.
But Lovejoy's pond, 16 or so inches of ice, has dozens of people motoring around and having fun.
I'm feeling good. We got a lot of people out here. Yeah, it turned out good.
Some of those out have been fishing for years.
7 years almost. He'll be 7 on St. Patrick's Day, and he's been fishing since
he's been a toddler.
Toddler.
And others are on the ice for the first time.
My brother let us use his auger, which we've never used before ever. And we did 3 holes, and we're watching it. We got a false alarm, but it is really fun.
Aiden Lassard reeled in a big one, weighing in at 5 pounds, 12 ounces. His bass went straight to the leaderboard.
I think my heart was beating more than him, honestly, when I saw it. The reel was just running. I knew it was going to be a good fish.
Thanks to Christian Harsa for that story. Congrats to Aiden Lassard, who ended up winning both the bass and the biggest fish competitions, walking away with a brand new pack basket and 5 new ice fishing traps.
What a prize.
Next up, got to learn how to play cribbage while you're waiting for a bite. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.